Is it bad to add fish to a new tank? Well, a simple question like that does not have a simple answer in terms of being able to tell you guys yes or no, because it is a lot more nuanced than that. And hopefully I'm able to share with you guys where that nuance lies and what you can do in terms of adding fish to a new tank if you already have fish and need to figure out what to do with them because you realize this might not be the best thing. Hey guys, welcome back to the Aquarium Library with Ann. Today we're talking about adding fish into new tanks and all that is incorporated with that, the nitrogen cycle, bacteria, the size of fish, size of tanks, plants, all those different types of things. So if you're interested in that, make sure to stay tuned. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel maybe. And if you like this video as well, maybe click on one of those videos that pops up at the end of this one and check out some of the other videos that I have on my aquarium channel. So with that, let's get into adding fish to new tanks and whether or not that is good or bad. So before we get started, I sort of want to lay out a roadmap of where we're going, what we're going to be talking about, so you have an idea of how all these things interconnect and what all is going on. So first thing we're going to talk about is what is a new tank. We're going to talk about why is it bad to add fish into a new tank regarding the nitrogen cycle. And we're talking about situations where it is bad to add fish into a new tank or situations where it's okay to add fish into a new tank and situations where it's good to add fish into a new tank. And then after that, we'll be talking about some of the more nuances of it, meaning the size of fish, the tank size, the number of fish, the plants that you're adding, all those different types of things that contribute to whether or not you can add fish into a new tank. So this will be a little bit longer of a video, but hopefully it can help you guys figure out whether or not it is bad to add fish to your new fish tank. So I think the most basic or classic definition of a new fish tank, if there ever is one or was one, or maybe I'm just making up one now, but my definition of a new fish tank for this video is going to be a tank that has all new or clean or sterile equipment going into it. So a new tank would be a tank that is a dry fish tank with dry filter media, dry gravel, dry air stone, dry filter, dry plastic plants, dry decorations. Everything in there is brand new or used and dry or anything in those combinations. You just want to add in those things, the water and the fish. And that's what I'm classifying as a new tank. So once we have that new tank set up, or that idea of what a new tank is in my head and what we're going to be working with, we need to think about, is it bad to add fish into that new tank that we just described? And the answer to that is yes, it is bad to add fish into that tank. And the reason behind why it is bad is because in that new tank where everything is clean and dry and sterile, quote unquote, there's no bacterial colony on it, you're not going to have, as I mentioned, any bacteria on there that's going to be able to convert your ammonia that your fish release into nitrate, which is non-toxic or less toxic than ammonia and nitrite are. So in that situation of that new tank that we described, that is not going to be a good thing for the fish. It's going to be a bad thing for the fish. So we want to avoid that. And the way that we can avoid having a bad situation is by making it into an okay situation or making it into a good situation. So we talked about the why it is bad is because we don't have the nitrogen cycle happening because of the bacteria that we have. And a little bit more about that really quickly before we go into the okay and the good. The bacteria in your fish tank, in an established fish tank, are going to convert that ammonia that you have being released from your fish's gills into the water. Once it's in that water, the bacteria in the water is going to convert that ammonia into nitrite, and then some other bacteria is going to convert that nitrite into nitrate. And ammonia and nitrite are very toxic to fish, whereas nitrite is relatively non-toxic compared to the other ammonia and nitrite. So that's just a little brief rundown of the bacterial associations of the nitrogen cycle, and that's what we're trying to establish in this tank so that you can add fish directly into your fish tank. So we talked about situations where it is bad. Now we're going to talk about situations where it's okay. So if you have that sterile tank that we have with water and fish you're trying to add into it, an okay situation would be, in my opinion, would be going out and buying a bacterial starter from Fritz or what other company that you like or support or have around you, and buying one of their bacteria starters or things of that nature. And that bottle of bacteria is going to be able to be added to your tank, and once added to your tank, it's basically going to kickstart the bacterial colonies in there and the nitrogen cycle, so that when you add your fish into there, there are bacteria that are already in it that can then be able to convert that ammonia into nitrite into nitrate. And the reason why I say that is okay and is a okay solution if you're in a pinch or a bind, because those bacterial colonies are going to be coming from a lab setting and they're not going to be necessarily tuned to an actual fish tank. Because there are a lot more bacteria in a singular fish tank. And if I ever make a video about it, I'll leave it up here for you guys to check out the intricacy and the complexity of the nitrogen cycle and all that is involved in it. And it's not as simple as we normally think of it as. So that bacterial colony bottle starter kit thingamajigger will add a couple bacteria strains into it, and it'll be enough for you to get by in terms of converting that ammonia into nitrite into nitrate. So that's why I'm saying it is okay. A better situation, or a situation where it is good to add a fish into a new tank, is if you have either, a tank that's already been cycled, meaning that you didn't go out and purchase the fish tank and everything at the same time, but you were thinking ahead of time and had your tank established and cycling, and you were able to add ammonia and fish food and things of that nature to build up that nitrogen cycle in your fish tank with the help of the bacteria, and you actually are converting ammonia, nitrite into nitrate. And you can tell that from test strips, whether it be Tetra dipsticks or API master test. You can tell and see as that process is happening and be able to actually see the changes happening. So that would be one way to have a good situation of adding fish to a new tank. Another good situation of adding fish into a new tank would be taking bacteria from an existing aquarium that you have or a friend has. All this requires of you is to go in there, take out some sponges, wring out those sponges into a bag or directly into the tank itself, and all that gunk and mold, counterintuitive to what it would seem, is going to have a bunch of bacteria on there, and that bacteria will be able to then go out and colonize the rest of your new tank and be able to kickstart or jumpstart your tank. And that's usually how I actually kickstart and jumpstart all of my new tanks, is taking either my old media that I have, or if I'm setting up fish in a new place, getting media from an existing tank of a friend that I know is relatively, clean and doesn't have any diseases or parasites coming along with it. So those are 3 different situations of when it is bad to add fish into a new tank, where it's okay to add fish into a new tank in a bind, and where it is good to add fish into a new tank. So if you guys have any questions about that, feel free to ask them in the comments below. And we're actually going to go into the next part of it, which is even more nuanced than those 3 things, and it's going to be based on the amount of fish that you have, the size of the fish that you have, and the size of the fish tank that you have, as well as the aquarium plants that you have. So if you already got all the information you want, fine, go ahead, leave. But if you want to stay with me and learn a little bit more about why the size of your fish matter, stay tuned, and we'll hop into that now. So as we were talking about before, we can have a cycled system where we are creating that cycle with fish food or ammonia or things of that nature, and actually going through the process of the nitrogen cycle. Whereas we can also kickstart it with taking bacteria from sponges or gravel or things of that nature and adding it into our new tank. The thing that we have to be wary about, especially when we're doing a fishless cycle, when you're actually adding fish food or ammonia into your system, you can run into the issue of overloading your system, meaning that you could have this cycle established in your fish tank, but when you go in and add your fish into your tank, you could be adding either too many or too large a fish for the cycle that has been established in your tank. So think of it this way: if you have 1 gram of ammonia that you're adding in every single day for 30 days to get your cycle started, great, fantastic, you have your cycle started, you're good to go. If you then go out and purchase fish, and those fish total to, say, 10 grams of ammonia, that cycle that you have established, that bacterial colony that you have established, cannot keep up with the ammonia released by the fish into the system, and you're going to start seeing your ammonia levels increase as that bacteria can no longer keep up with the ammonia being released, and they have to start multiplying and replicating and trying to grow really quickly to be able to consume all this ammonia. And in that time between adding your fish in and the bacteria colony ramping up, you could potentially have your fish die because of too high ammonia, but your tank was cycled beforehand. So a good way to avoid this problem, especially when you're doing a fishless cycle and not using a kickstart method, is you are probably going to want to start off by adding fish slowly. If you want to err on the side of caution, you'd want to start adding fish slowly and in smaller amounts, and slowly start having your bacterial load increasing with the number of fish that you're putting into it. If you're just kickstarting it with some squeezings of a sponge filter or sponge filter into the tank or hang a back filter onto the new tank, you will probably be able to think of it more so in the idea of what was the load of the previous tank and how much fish can I put in based on maybe say half of what that load is, assuming that your filter has half of the ability of the total bacterial colony in the system in that singular filter. Hopefully that makes sense. So we're going to assume that that filter that you take off or the ringings that you do is half of what is able to, support the fish in your other tank. So I would say that you would probably want to start off, again, on the conservative side and go lighter on the fish and slowly start increasing your fish if you are able to do that. The final thing that we want to think about is the tank size. And the tank size, if you have a large group of fish, but you're putting them into, say, a 400-gallon tank, 100 neon tetras isn't going to do anything. But those same 100 neon tetras in, say, a 10-gallon tank could be very problematic because the amount of ammonia is not going to be diluted across 400 gallons. It's only being diluted across 10 gallons. And that colony of bacteria that is in that 10-gallon tank might be able to support only, say, 10, but if you add in more fish than it is capable of handling, then you're going to start running into an issue and it's compounding it. Whereas in that 400-gallon tank with 100 neon tetras, the fish in there, that the load that they're going to produce, the amount of ammonia that they're going to produce is going to be very minimal in comparison to the dilution of that ammonia across the systems. So those are just some other things to take into considerations besides cycling that you also want to think about: the size of the fish, the number of fish, and the size of your fish tank. As well as the final thing that we want to talk about just very briefly in terms of adding fish into a new tank is if you're adding plants. So plants like your filters or gravel or sponges or things of that nature are also going to have bacteria colonize on them, though just not as much. But the one benefit with plants, if you have adequate lighting for them, they can actually start absorbing the ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate out of the water for their own growth, which decreases the amount of reliance upon bacteria, and you're relying upon the plants to be able to simulate that ammonia out of the system for you. Though that is just something to observe and to let you guys know about. I wouldn't necessarily fully rely upon plants as the only means of introducing bacteria into the new fish tank, but they are definitely going to help you manage the ammonia and waste from those new fish in your new tank. So hopefully I was able to help you guys figure out whether or not it is bad to add fish into a new tank, and hopefully you can see the nuance to that answer and see why it's a much more complex answer than just yes and no. So I hope you guys found it informative, and if you did, like the video, maybe check out some other videos at the end of here, and consider subscribing to the channel. I hope you guys have a blessed day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.